this episode of Disrupt Education, I have Jeff Armstrong at my house. Thanks for being here, man. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm a partner in Mindful Communications, and the other partner is my better half, my wife, Laura.
Always.
So we like to say that we give ourselves a lot of opportunity to practice being mindful communicators.
Mm-hmm. What do you do with the company? You do a lot of consulting. If you can give us an overview of what Mindful Communications is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. We do emotional intelligence training for individuals, organizations, and institutions. And emotional intelligence encapsulates a lot.
Right.
But if you look at kind of the classic model, Daniel Goleman's model, he categorizes it as the self, which is self-awareness and self-regulation, and the social, which is social awareness, relationship management, and communication skills. So I'm the self, I focus on that, and Laura focuses on the social.
So she lets you be selfish. That's pretty nice.
Sometimes, not all the time.
So let's talk about your path and how you got to this point. So you're a Michigan State grad.
Yep.
And you went into building your own company for a while.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, I went to Michigan State. Was lucky enough to take an entrepreneur class. My senior year, it might have even been my last semester.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, it lit me up. It was really probably the best, mainstream schooling education that I got, because I really became passionate and was creative about it. So when I had an opportunity to start a company when I was 25, I jumped at it.
Yeah.
And it was great. For more or less 23 plus years, it was a successful company. And about 5 years ago, I went through a period of chronic stress, and probably emotional exhaustion and burnout,
Right.
all this great stuff that you hear about that happens sometimes. And, I was just framing everything in a negative light, didn't see much opportunity in things, and was kind of just doing one of these things.
Right.
Right. And something clicked, or something snapped, however you want to take a look at it.
Right.
And I just knew I had to go on a quest for tools. I needed to figure out a way to get out from underneath how I was feeling. And it's, thinking about it wasn't solving the problem. And it's kind of like that quote by Einstein, you're not going to solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created the problem.
Right.
So I didn't know that quote then, but
Right,
I know it now, and I'm like,
that's a great quote. Very, very adaptable. So we've had a lot of conversation about students in general, and you became a student on your own when you were looking into what you're doing now, out of necessity, would you say?
Absolutely.
What types of things can you see something like mindful communications and the social emotional learning, and especially the self, your expertise, with a younger person in a high school or even beyond in college? Like, how do you see that coming into play, and how can this help?
We now know. When I say we, I mean science. Science now knows that our brains and bodies work better at an emotional positive. They just do. And so if we can figure out a way, either systemically through the school structure, how to create environments that are more emotionally engaging in a positive way, or if we can take it upon ourselves, which is kind of what I did and what I train on, to work from the right side of the ledger as far as emotions are concerned.
Right.
Because you really can, with practice, when you practice, kind of calming the nervous system and repatterning the mind a bit, you really can kind of change, that baseline for yourself. It's not something that's set in stone. So if you're chronically worrying or feeling high anxiety, or have a lot of self-doubt, or any fear-based emotion, you can kind of train that older part of your brain to rest.
Right.
And so with the brain, it probably is worth mentioning, kind of a little bit how this works is
Sure.
that, we have an older part of the brain that's like the reactive part. It's like the unconscious habitual patterns that we have, and that's home to these ancient biological survival strategies, right? And then we have a more evolved part of the brain that's the cortex, and that's home to our prefrontal lobes, free will, awareness, problem solving, creativity. It's really our creative brain.
Right.
And you'd think that the more evolved part of the brain would override the less evolved part of the brain.
Yes, you would.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So it's like the reactive brain can get hypervigilant, where it's kind of on this chronic scan for danger, and some of that is our biology and our DNA, but an awful lot of it is our past experiences, and kind of how they pattern themselves.
Right.
So if you get a soldier that's coming back from Afghanistan, that has PTSD, he's got a reactive brain that maybe is, if you look at it like a thermostat, and you almost can,
Right.
He's set at a hot
Right.
90 degrees, right? Because he's subconsciously always on the lookout for danger.
Sure,
and
sure.
interpreting things that are happening in his environment as threats. And that has a profound impact on how we're thinking, feeling, and behaving.
Right.
So if you've got this, if you look into amygdala hijack, if you want to dig into this any deeper than what I am, it'll kind of explain how this works, but it's almost kind of like giving yourself a bit of a lobotomy,
Sure.
where you're kind of coming at life as a reactive state rather than responding for the greater good of all. So you can set that with practice, and what I teach and what we teach at Mindful is we show people how they can calm their nervous system and take this thermostat.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, guys. Keep that in.
Yeah, I will. Little guy next door said hi. So the thermostat.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So you can, when you practice calming your nervous system, you can work on lowering that thermostat level to, maybe a cool 70 degrees,
Right.
where you're accessing more of the creative brain, right? There's more space for that to run because you're not, running fear-based emotions as much.
Right.
Is really what it is.
I see this a lot in high school. Not necessarily like a soldier coming back from Afghanistan, but I see a lot of students either like disconnect or it's fear-based or looking on the next thing that is going to quote unquote maybe harm them or that realm. And you spoke of the frontal lobe, right? And
yeah.
and that's literally when you're talking about creativity
Yeah.
and problem solving and all this, which I think at the secondary level, and I'm specifically speaking high school, we're supposed to be working with students on that. I feel like we're leaving out the creativity part.
Right.
Would you say, and we both have children who are pretty much that age, would you say we're missing out on a lot of that in education, or just not really? Because with all the things going on, the shootings, the bullying, and those types of
Right.
things, how could we better handle that through what you're explaining here?
I think there's a lot of great teachers out there, amazing teachers that have really helped out my family personally. And hello, if any of are watching.
Right. Hopefully they are.
Yeah, right. Disrupt education. So, one teacher, Mrs. Spitzner, Kara Spitzner, who won the Golden Apple because she ran her classroom in elementary school. I think it was a 4th grade class, kind of like Google.
Oh, wow.
Where these kids got creative and they were thinking outside the box, and she created an amazing environment in elementary school. I think we probably need more of that. And I know also that same daughter feels a lot of anxiety, and now she's in 6th grade, or just graduated in 6th grade.
Sure, yeah.
Hi, Ava.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah.
Making it to 7th grade.
Right. She felt a lot of anxiety as a 6th grader, and that's no fault of the teacher, but maybe all the testing and some of the, I think kids are looking at failing is a bad thing, you know, or maybe failing should be celebrated,
Right.
you know, as a path to growing. And then I have a son that, you know, geometry just isn't his thing, you know, and we were pounding a square peg in a round hole all year.
Right.
And, you know, I think it's from the school point of view, or from a parental point of view, or just trying to make this better point
Right.
of view.
Yeah.
We got to find a way to capture what lights these kids up, you know, figure out what they're passionate about, and then learn, you know, from that context. So you mentioned Michigan State, and you know, that was fine, and I guess average, you know, kind of when I went through my personal crisis and stress, and I just became a self-learner, and I couldn't believe how hard I had to dig to find this stuff, you know, and how hard I had to dig to understand it, and how it affected my physiology, but I was passionate about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it just it was like latching onto a tractor beam, and I wanted to know everything I could about it. And learning wasn't painful, you know, where maybe in the past
right.
it was.
Yeah, that's quite a statement. Painful learning.
Yeah.
Boy, that's something that you heard it here first. You're going to quote that because I think that's exactly how a lot of our students and even adults, you know, approach life. Like, learning is painful. We're taught that, oh, school is a bad word in a lot of instances. Not all the time. You know, in our conversations with understanding how people react to situations and different things like that, can you give our viewers a few things? Because I know teachers in my line of work, students, parents of young people, we raise a lot into that 90-degree level. What are a couple of things that you talk about with your clients, and things that, you know, they can kind of start to look into or focus on to lower that thermostat?
Right. Well, first off, you know, emotions are very contagious. And if it always seems to be that the teachers, or if it's in a business setting or any kind of organizational or institutional setting where there's a leader, they're going to be the big pendulum that kind of sets the tone for everybody. So just knowing that as a teacher or a leader, really how you're acting and behaving has a huge ramification on either your students or your team.
Yeah.
And you can kind of get into the science a little bit on that, which we did a little bit, which is intriguing and probably worth mentioning a bit. But when you're feeling, as far as the body's concerned, you know, our whole human spectrum of emotions can be categorized in one or two categories. You either have renewing emotions or you have depleting emotions. And renewing emotions are all the kind of the heart-based emotions like love, care, joy, appreciation, gratitude, courage. You know, the heart rhythm as measured when you're feeling these emotions is kind of like this, they call it a coherent waveform, you know, and this has a lot of ramifications on the body and beyond, not least of which your brain synchronizes to that pattern. And if you're feeling, you know, peaceful or content or appreciative or excited, you know, you're actually opening up higher regions of your brain just because the brain synchronizes to the signal being sent from the heart. And the same is true of, you know, depleting emotions.
Right.
So if you have an incoherent waveform as the heart rhythm is measured, kind of this jagged, irregular, crazy day on the stock market, you know, Bitcoin is going, you know, crazy today, you know, so that's an incoherent waveform.
Right.
And then the brain synchronizes to that pattern. And that actually results in what scientists call cardiac incoherence, and that does cortical inhibition, so your brain isn't working as well.
Right.
So that's important to know, right? How you're feeling has big ramifications on how you're...
Especially if you're in a classroom, like if you're, I mean, it's the old get busy living or get busy dying, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
But there's a lot of science behind that.
Absolutely.
And if you're out of sync, you whatever is presented to you in an educational sense doesn't matter.
Exactly. Because you're compromised.
Right.
You know, you don't have access to that creative brain the same way that you would be if you were coming from an emotionally positive state. This is why when you're walking in nature, or you're taking a shower. I had one business owner tell me that he does his best thinking on a plane. He owns a managed services company, and he doesn't sign up for Wi-Fi, and he's like, nobody can get a hold of me. When I'm on my flight, and he just says my best thoughts come when that happens. Because he feels peaceful.
Right.
And that's what we do our best thinking. We have these great ideas or a problem, a solution to a problem pops in our head. But if we're really angry, we're triggered, we do something that we later say or, we regret, it's because we're giving ourselves a do-it-yourself frontal lobotomy.
Right. That's really awesome. And I think there's so much more to learn here with education and understanding, because you're educating businesses, you're educating teams to really understand how, for yourself, like self-awareness and understanding, how to keep that temperature where it's at. And I think it's really amazing what you do. Where can people find you?
Our website is www.mindfulcommunications.com. Twitter, link in with me, Jeff Armstrong. Twitter is at JSA Armstrong.
It's funny because when we go way back, like into social media, it's like mine are a little bit all over the place. Now people figured out, but we'll put all those up down here. Look, I appreciate your time. I think there's a lot that we can learn as educators and understanding with your expertise and how to really lower that to where it's a comfortable learning environment within somebody's self. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
This is another way that we can disrupt education by looking into mindful communications. See how I use that? We'll keep disrupting, guys. You will too. Hope to hear from you soon.